Hey there, I'm Solomon from Coding Coders. Today I want to show you a brand new tool that allows you to create presentation decks. Instead of using fiddly tools such as Google Slides or Apple Keynote, you can program your slides using the UI system that you already use every day, Compose Multiplatform. This tool allows you to lay out and animate your content just like you're used to. Today I won't go into details about how to do that, but I will show a broad overview of how this tool works. Ready? Let's go. Okay, let's start the presentation. Today I'm introducing CUP. CUP stands for Compose Your Pres. So CUP is a framework that uses Compose to render presentation slides. So this is a slide, and this is also a slide. So you can see you can easily transition between slides. And slides can have steps. So this slide has 2 steps. So what is a slide? A slide is a composable function that declares the number of steps it will render and takes an integer as parameter. So this is step 0, this is step 1, because this slide declares that it has 2 steps. Because each slide declares the number of steps, we can provide a list of slides. So you can see, for example, the intro had 2 slides, and this simple slide, 2 steps, sorry, and this simple slide has also 2 steps. And because each slide is a composable function that takes a step as parameter, we can also render each slide and each step in this overview. You don't have to program that. This is given by the CUP framework. And CUP renders each slide and each step of each slide in this overview so you can navigate through your slides. And this is all the slides that I'm going to show you today. Oh, sorry, I should have said spoiler alert. Okay, so how do you create a slide? You create a slide by creating a value that uses this by slide. So in CUP, each slide must have a unique name. By using by, the by keyword of the Kotlin language, we ensure that this slide, for example, is named simple slide, and if all your slides are in the same package, then no 2 slides can have the same name. Then we provide a number of steps, and then because we take that step as parameter, we can animate the slide content as much as we want. Here, for example, this slide has 2 steps, and it only shows the second part, it has 2 steps, when the step is equals or over 1. How you animate and how you lay out the content of your slide according to the given step is completely up to you. There's nothing new here, only Compose Multiplatform. So it's the UI framework that you're used to. You don't have to learn anything new in order to describe the content of your slides. How did I show source code? For example, this is how source code is shown by default. But the problem is, of course, by default, it's black on transparent. So let's add a white background. As you can see, the source code composable takes a modifier, and this modifier is just a compose modifier. So if you want to add a background, add rounded corners, add a padding, all that is handled through regular compose API. Well, this is a dark theme presentation, so let's use this darker theme. And the darker theme is better displayed on black background. So this is how you would, for example, display source code with black background. Oh, and I don't really like this font. This is the standard fixed width font, but I'd rather have the JetBrains Mono font, because this is the font that I'm used to when working on IntelliJ. So I can easily change the text style of the source code. And you may have noticed that this is not the theme that I was using previously. The theme that I was using previously is called Coding Source Code Theme. It's a theme that I've created especially for my slides. So creating a theme for your source code is that simple. If you know what CSS is, it's basically the same, meaning you just have to define some text coloration and font width and all that, and then apply it according to a class that's given to you. I'm not going to show you how to create a source code theme. This will be shown in the next video, but just know that it's that simple and that you can very easily create your own source code theme. Now, the problem with this code is that I have to provide each time the theme, the style, and the modifier each time I want to display source code. And this is not optimal. But the beauty of Compose is that it encourages us to compose our composables. So for this presentation, for example, I created this code-in source code composable. It's a simple composable that encapsulates all the parameters that I'm giving to source code. So now each time I'm showing source code in this presentation, all I have to do is call the code-in source code function. The beauty of CUP is that it uses Compose, and so it allows you to create your own composables and abstract away all your configuration in order to create your own composables. Source code, creating source code is complicated for CUP because it has to load highlight.js. This is the library it uses to highlight the source code. It has to parse the highlight.js result. It has to apply the theme and highlight.js result. So this may lead to some jank when you're showing source code like that. And this is the perfect opportunity to talk to you about prepared slides. So prepared slides are slides, but where you can prepare some content. This is a prepared slide that do not prepare anything, but this is a prepared slide that displayed a source code that was prepared ahead of time. So when you display a slide, its content will only, of course, be executed when the slide is displayed. So every source code, every code that is inside the slide content will only be displayed if the slide is displayed on screen. If you want to prepare some resources that may take some time and run some code ahead of time that will be later used by the slide when it is displayed, you can use prepared slide. So here, for example, the source code is parsed, highlighted, and ready to be displayed as soon as the slide enters the screen. So I just animated source code. How did I do that? Let's take an example. Let's say I want to talk to you about how lazy works in Kotlin. And I would say something like, hey, look, this is an assignment, but maybe I don't need the answer, and I'd rather calculate the answer if and only if I need it the first time I access it. So instead of using this assignment, I could use by lazy. And know that we are using by and not equal, so be aware of that. Okay, so let's go back. We have 3 steps in our source code animation. The first is showing this equal. The second is replacing the equal by lazy. Note that equal disappears, by lazy appears, but also this bracket appears. So it's not only by lazy, it's also the bracket. Then finally, the third step is that we highlight this by lazy. So how would we do that in the Compose Your Prez source code animation system? We would do this like that. So first of all, we create this source code with remember source code, and then we create markers. So markers are ways to define sections in the source code that you are displaying. So here we have 3 markers. The first marker defines only this section. So it starts here, it ends here, and its only content is this equal here. The second marker starts here. The second section, sorry, starts here and ends here. But it also starts here and ends here, meaning that you can have multiple sections defined by the same marker. And their content, well, it's a bit hard to see, but this is the content of the first section, including this opening bracket, and this is the section of the second sections, include just the closing brackets. And finally, we define this last section. And note that a section can contain other sections. This equal will be only shown on step 0, meaning that it will disappear on step 1 and 2. These sections will be hidden on step 0, meaning that they will appear and be present on steps 1 and 2. And finally, this section will be highlighted, meaning it will pop out on step 2. So as you can see, it's really easy to create marker that defines animations and then apply those markers in the source code you're displaying to create sections. Okay, this is not perfect. This can be a little bit hard to read. So there's a tool, there's a boolean that you can set to true in its debug colors, and it will highlight your section. So if we go back to our example, I can highlight the section, and you can see that there is one section equal here that is displayed, and then two sections that are not displayed, and then you can see the animation and the sections that are animating. And finally, if I highlight, you can see which section is highlighted. So this tool allows you to visualize your sections defined by your markers. This is not optimal. This is not the best experience you can have, but this is the best we have right now. We are working on an editor for source code animation, basically a source code editor that will allow you to visually define sections and animate them. This is not ready yet, so it's very, very early days. We've just started the work on that, and I cannot show you how it looks like, and it will not be ready tomorrow, but know that we're working on that. And by the way, if you want to have animated emoji in your presentation, check out this library. We think it's pretty cool. Okay, so how do you create a presentation project? Well, just like every Kotlin multi-platform project, you start with a Gradle project and you apply those 4 plugins. The first is the Kotlin multi-platform plugin, because this project is a Kotlin multi-platform project. And the second and third are the Compose plugins. And yeah, that's because this project is a Compose multi-platform project. And finally, you have the Cap plugin. So the Cap plugin allows you to skip a lot of Compose multi-platform configuration. It applies all standard configuration for you, and so you don't have to worry about creating an index HTML if you're deploying to the web, or applying the right configuration, the right main class, and all that. Everything is taken care for you by the Cap plugin. Then in Gradle, you need to define the targets. So this allows you to target either and or the web, the desktop and or the web. So you should always target the desktop. This presentation, for example, is a desktop application. This is the stable way of creating a Cap presentation. You can also target the web, and we'll talk about that later, but you should always have target desktop, and you may or may not target the web according to your needs. And then finally, you need to add some dependencies. So by default, the Cap plugin adds the standard Compose dependencies. So it already adds the Compose runtime dependency and the Compose desktop dependency on the JVM, for example. But you still need to add some dependencies, namely those 3 dependencies. The first is the source code dependency, because if you want to animate source code, then you need to have the source code composable, which is not in Cap by default. And then if you're using those 2 plugins that I'm going to be talking about in the next slides, then you'll need to add them as dependencies as well. And finally, Compose Your Prez does not take assumption as to which material composables you're going to use. So if you're going to use material, you need to depend on that, and if you're going to use material 3, you also need to depend on that. And finally, create your main KT file with your main function. You create a Cap application, you give it a presentation, and that's it. In the presentation, you give it some slides, and you may want to configure your presentation. In the configuration, you can configure the plugins. So CAP comes with two standard plugins, which are Laser and Speaker Window. The Laser plugin you've already seen. It's the ability to show a red dot on screen, draw on the slide. For example, this is a perfect smiley. And it also allows you to highlight portion of your slide with this tool. This is the Laser plugin. The Speaker Window plugin allows you to use a speaker window. So you would have this main window on the big screen or the projector, and you would have this window on your screen, your laptop screen, and on this screen you can see the current slide and the next slide, or to be more precise, the current step and the next step. This is the presentation, but rendered one step later. So, for example, I can see that this is the current slide, and it has one step, and the next step is this one. Now, because this is filled, I can see that this is the last step of the slide, and the next step, it will be actually the next slide, and I can prepare myself for the next slide. I can also display speaker notes. So speaker notes you can write with Compose, or you can write with Markdown. And finally, there's this little timer. And you know, when I'm in a presentation, this is a very important tool for me, because without a timer, I will always overshoot the time frame that is allowed to me. So that is a tool that I use in every of my presentations. Okay, so how do you display speaker notes? Because Speaker Window is a plugin, this is not a speaker notes parameter to the slide. The slide can be given a number of user data. So user data is any data that you want to attach to the slide. Here, for example, I'm attaching this speaker note MD user data that is speaker notes markdown. You can attach multiple data or just one. And here, for example, I'm attaching this speaker notes MD to this SN slide. So attaching speaker notes to a slide is as simple as creating a speaker notes MD object with the string containing markdown. And look, I can create cool slides transitions. So how do I animate transition between slides? Well, we didn't reinvent the wheel here. This is just Compose animation framework. You don't have to learn something new. If you already do animation in your applications, then you can animate slides in Compose Your Press. The only thing that is not standard is this is forward Boolean, because you know slide transitions are different if you're going backward or if you're going forward. So you need to be wary of that. And when writing your transition, you need to know, okay, it's we're animating forward or we're animating backward. But that's it. Other than that, you just have to use Compose animation framework, which you already do. And then once you've created the transition, you have to apply it to the slides. So here, for example, I want to animate the transition between slide A and slide B. So I'm animating the end transition of slide A and the start transition of slide B. And finally, you should know how to theme your presentation. So if you create a CAP application like this, it will display a very bland presentation. Black on white presentation, nothing very interesting. You need to add your own colors and maybe your own, decoration around it. For example, in this presentation, there's this progress bar under it that is not standard, and there's this image that is displayed behind the slides. So how did I do that? Well, the first thing is to create a theme. So here, for example, I'm using material theme, and then I can decorate around the slides by giving it a slide content. And yes, I also need to define a presentation background. Now I can decorate around the slide content, and for example, I can say, okay, the slide content inside the slides, this will be the content color. So for example, I can change the local content color composition local, and in my slides, every content will be the right color. And of course, Compose encourages you to compose your composables. So you can create your own coding presentation composable, which I did, and this presentation is exactly encapsulates this presentation. So I don't have to rewrite my theme every time I create a new presentation. I can create every presentation using the same theme that I created for Cup. Finally, you should know that you can export to the browser. So this is the presentation that is running in a browser. It's the same presentation and it works the same. You can move between slides. You can see all the steps of all the slides. You can see the slides lists. You can draw over the slides. You can even see the overview and move between slides, for example. Here we are, but you should be wary of two things. The first is that the web export doesn't pack all the features that the desktop app is packing. So for example, there's no speaker window, and some other features will not be provided in the web export. The second is that you should treat it as an export. Remember that Kotlin for WebAssembly and Compose for WebAssembly are in alpha. It works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it crashes. It's better every day, but there are some weird things, such as, I don't know, for example, yeah, did you see that? This is a problem that is currently in the web version, but may or may not be later. So you should treat it as an export. And remember that because it's in alpha, it's not stable. So please do not use that as the main way of presenting. This is a backup, but this is most of all a way for your audience to access your slides, either during the talk or later. Do not use it as the main way of presenting. You should always use the application to present. But this is a neat way of sharing your slides with your audience. And note that this is just Compose. So for example, I can create clickable links, and this is a link that leads to the Coding Coders website. Make sure to have a look. Okay, that's it for me. I want to thank you very much for watching until this far. If the CAP project interests you, you can have a look at its sources. You can read its documentation. If you're ready to start presenting with CAP, head to this quick start template project. You just have to clone it, and then there's a to-do list, and in minutes you will be creating your slides with Compose Multiplatform. And if you do, remember to join our community and share with us your presentations. And of course, we'll always be here to offer help if you need it. In the next few videos, I will be going into much more details on how to create CAP presentations, how to start a project, how to write a slide, how to lay out and animate your content, how to display and animate source code, how to export and present using Compose Your Press, etc., etc. In the meantime, you can have a look at the video that was just uploaded by my friend and colleague Romain, who explains technically how we went from zero to a full presentation engine using only Compose Multiplatform. I will see you shortly, and until then, don't forget to share your knowledge.